I'd like to call this council meeting to order. At this point in time, I would receive a motion for the approval of the agenda, and prior to that, Mr. Pope, I will recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, council. Good evening, citizens of Fairfield. Mr. Chairman, before the approval of the minutes, I would request that council reconsider one item I placed on your desk. Ms. Peggy Hensley came by my office this afternoon, and on the millage resolution that we had adopted, under the fire board capital, that amount needs to be amended to 2.0. That reduces the overall of the total millage down from 191.7 to 191.4. So she came by today and she said that was a typo on the sheet, and we need to correct that before we actually approve the minutes. And if we could, if it's appropriate, if we could just reorder the agenda and just add that as 7B on the millage, but that just approves or reapproves what we had done previously with the millage order with that correction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So, second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. This time we will have an invocation by Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, sir. Would you all let's bow in prayer, please? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for being able to meet with freedoms tonight in our country. Dear Lord, you know the actions and the words and the feelings of each one of us. And I ask tonight and from here on out, we have peaceful communications and peaceful feelings for each other and work through our business for this county and do the best we can for our citizens in this county. I thank you for the many, many blessings that you give to us. Some we see and some we don't, but we thank you for being there with our blessings. I ask your continued gifts of grace, mercy, and love. All three of these we need to live in this life as a good Christian person. Mostly we need the love. Be with all those who are with us tonight and bless every family that is represented in this room tonight. And I ask that you go with us through our meeting, take us all safely back to our homes for a good night's rest. All these things I ask in your precious name. Amen.
We will now have approval of the minutes with the stipulation of the change that will come under 7B for a regular meeting October 14th.
So moved. Yeah.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Vote by the same sign.
No.
Okay. One nay, that's right. We're now down to public comment.
Mr. Henry Dixon would like to speak tonight on the subject of public interest.
Thank you.
Thank you. As to public interest, I would like to announce that Ms. Kinley and Mr. Ferguson have been served their papers for the pending lawsuit about the monies, and just want to make that announcement. Thank you.
Mr. Jimmy Ray Douglas on the subject of millage.
On May 13, 2013, Fairfield County Council stipulated the millage rate by resolution would be 191 point, now I think it's 91.3. And taxes of $22,780,152 would be required for the budget 2013-2014. There's a problem with these figures. Fairfield County Treasurer's Office has the millage rate at 181.3 and 191.43 would be a difference of 10.4 mils or 10.1. The millage using the resolution figures would be, the mill value using the resolution figures would be $118,832.30. The mill value in 2011, 2012 was $119,939 and was raised to $127,058 when Phil Heinley claimed he reduced taxes. The true mill value now is $127,427 per mill. It's an increase of $7,488 from 2012, and an increase in taxes of $1,435,449.60 each year. The South Carolina State Constitution and legal requirements for county budget requires the county agrees to provide a certain level of services to citizens and businesses in return for taxes and fees they pay. The budget places a legal limit on spending and establishes special conditions for county spending. Number 2, the budget must include all revenue sources, and council must provide for the levy of taxes and may require reports, estimates, and stats from county agencies receiving county funds. A local governing body may increase the millage rate imposed for general operating purchases above the rate imposed for such purposes for the preceding year only to the extent of increase in the average of 12 months consumer price for the most recent 12-month period consisting of January through December of the preceding calendar year as determined by the Office of Research and Statistics for the State Budget and Control Board. The millage rate limitations may only be suspended and the millage rate increased upon a 2/3 vote of the county governing body and only for the following purposes: the deficiency of the preceding year, any catastrophic event outside the control of the governing body, compliance with the court order, taxpayer closures due to circumstances outside the control of governing body that decreases by 10% or more amount of revenue payable to the taxing jurisdiction in the preceding year. Compliance and regulations or statute enacted by the federal government for which a method of funding is not provided. Purchased by the local governing body of undeveloped real property or by residential development rights and undeveloped real property near an operating U.S. military base.
Mr. Douglas, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Randy Bright, on the subject of, I cannot read his writing.
It's a visor moment. A visor moment, a visor to the ground. I think South Carolina fans realize what a visor moment to the ground it means. It means we fumbled the ball as county council government. And the issue is that it's not just a few individuals who think we have weak leaders and an ineffective government. And in fact, these views are widely apparent. The 2012 Fairfield County Needs Assessment Survey revealed that only 2 out of 29 government departments receive favorable good ratings from our citizens. Previously, the 2010 Fairfield County Economic Study revealed further telling impediments to our own growth, including infighting among leadership, including an electorate, and I quote here, that maintains status quo and elects weak leaders. And we have just too many people who work in Fairfield County and do not live in Fairfield County. That really hurts our recycling of the money. Further, no wonder no one wants to live here. Poor services, high taxes. Every national real estate website lists high taxes as a severe impediment to purchase of a new residence or for moving a small business to that area. Yet, sometimes that can be mitigated by great schools and great services. Yet our schools and our services are ranked by every institution that ranks for South Carolina as in the bottom 25%. So we have high taxes, poor services. No one wants to move here. We're not going to get economic growth until this is fixed. And yet, we continue to raise our millage rate. Again. despite having the third highest millage rate already in our state, despite $86 million in revenue from VC Summer over the last several years, despite over $10 million in revenue from VC Summer this year alone, just in our general fund, despite already having the 26th highest mill value put upon the backs of a population that only ranks 35th in the state, despite already having at least the 20th highest mill value when VC Summer monies are included. So 35th population, but we pay more than most of the other counties who have much higher populations or equal to ours. I have some suggestions for county council. Come to grips with this reality and move this county forward in a productive manner. You can do it. Look for guidance in the aforementioned surveys. I never hear any of these surveys mentioned in any of the meetings or any of the documents. One of the surveys was 285 comprehensive pages of...
Mr. Bright, your time is up.
Okay,
Thank you.
lots of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Darlene Johnson, on the subject of public interest.
On a kind note, good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight in Fairfield County Resolution amending, restating, and ratifying the organizational rules and bylaws of the Fairfield County Council that was passed on the 11th day of February in 2013. Section 10A provides a format for the regular meetings agenda. In this format, public comments are placed near the top of the agenda, meaning it is one of the first orders of business. It has been this council's practice to not communicate and answer questions posed to them by Fairfield County constituents. I can understand that a policy that does not wish to join in argumentative discussions at county council meetings, but I also see a need to open channels of communication. To that end, I'm asking council to amend paragraph 10 of the council's bylaws and as amended on February the 11th, 2013, to reflect a change in the agenda, moving public comment to a position on the agenda immediately preceding council time, in hopes that we can ask questions pertinent to each evening's proceedings in a timely manner and allow council to respond to these questions and concerns. In other words, allow public time. Thank you for your consideration in this matter.
Thank you. Mr. Tim Schroll, on the subject of whistleblower protection.
Good evening, council and citizens. For about 6 months now, Sabin Fairfield has been attending these council meetings. One thing has become crystal clear, that being that there were and continue to be matters concerning operations in Fairfield County that council may or may not be aware of and are still being kept from public view. Perhaps this is because the former administrator, Mr. Hinley, wanted it that way. It's difficult at this time to say. There continue to be issues coming to the surface, things that apparently council still may not be aware of. We believe that there are people working for the county who in fact know what is going on, but they're unwilling to come forward because of fear of reprisal. While it is true that the state constitution, section 24, section 8, section 20M, subsection A, legislates whistleblower protection for county employees, the fact remains Fairfield County does not have such a policy in place that offers protections to employees without risking their job. For that reason, we're asking council to create and institute a whistleblower policy that would guarantee employees who expose wrongdoing would not be fired or otherwise punished. Perhaps it would be best they would come forward anonymously. Perhaps it would be appropriate for council to consider a rewards program similar to the states for money saved or recovered. Mr. Pope, I believe you can take this matter up, come up with a policy to present to these people that they will vote for, and we'll get back on the right track. Are you willing to work with us? Is council willing to work with us?
Willing to work with anyone.
I'll take you at your word. I've known you a long time and I've always thought about that. I hold you to your word. Thank you, sir.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
And I apologize. One thing, and this has happened several times, but I think every citizen of Fairfield needs to know this. During the public comment time, as the council rules stipulate, is not a time for dialogue of answering questions back and forth. So when you ask a question from the podium like that, it's not that someone doesn't want to respond. It is not appropriate from the rules. And if the lady who read, and she has, because I think she's asked me a question about the rules before, the rules don't allow that. So I don't want anyone to think that the council is not responding, but the meeting format, and I will tell you that it is customary all across the state with local government meetings, you don't respond in a way like that. You list your concerns and that information, and then have a response follow-up at a requisite meeting. You don't do that when you stand at the podium and ask that question. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that someone is just not responding. So when you asked me that question, and it wasn't appropriate to me, because actually you're addressing council, not me, because I actually work for them.
Next name. Right.
Mr. William Coleman on the subject of flow control.
Thank you. I come before you this evening to express my opposition to the proposed resolution you have on the agenda tonight. I have been aware of this pending Senate bill for some time, and I am in favor of its passage. Maybe it should be amended to specifically exclude out-of-state waste, because I think that's been a sticking point with some people. But why is it that the council chair is so adamantly opposed to this? As he has stated previously, it infringes on his home rule power to rule the county as he sees fit. Is there any other issue, since Fairfield isn't in the landfill business? Power. Why should a county be able to pass ordinances or zone to keep private enterprise from competing with them? These counties want a monopoly, and what will be next? Monopolize the rural water systems? Free enterprise, pro-business? Hardly. Mr. Chair, before you and council vote on this resolution, I urge you to ask the audience to show the hands as to what they think. Ask them to show the hands as to their desires. Then vote to represent these people, not to lose any of your power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carrie Matthews on the subject of attendance requirement.
Thank you very much. I can't help but say, after your comment, Mr. Pope, it's a little bit amusing that you mentioned that the response should be done in a follow-up meeting. Our problem is that there never seems to be any response at all publicly to any of the things that are brought up at the public hearings, and I think that's what the beef is here. Maybe not immediately answered, but considered, discussed, and reported back at a council meeting. One thing that has been mentioned several times that is dear to my heart is that empty chair right there. I really would appreciate if the council would consider some sort of policy of either requiring a certain number of attendances to county council meetings by council members, or in some way censuring a member who is chronically absent from meetings. And I find it very distressing that Mr. Trapp showed up to vote on money being spent for a project that he was interested in and supported in, but has not bothered to show up for many, many, many other meetings with a lot of other things that are important to me as one of his constituents. I would love to see also a little bit more in-depth explanation than these very brief and kind of technically worded things that are listed on the agenda. Maybe I'm just simple-minded, but I have trouble knowing sometimes what it is y'all are voting on, what it means for me, what it is in real language. For example, a more in-depth explanation of the old business ordinance number 617, My Family Farms. Does that mean that if I've got an old tractor sitting next to the barn that's sitting there to be used for parts, that I'm going to be in danger of having to remove or dispose of that tractor, or old farm buildings that you think aren't in good repair, but, you know, have been around for 100 years or more? I can't leave them on my farm. I just would like to know a little bit more about what y'all are talking about doing in some of these ordinances and resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mike Ward on the subject of integrity.
Ma'am, go ahead, I'm waiving my time.
Ms. Betty Scott Frazier on the subject of thank you, spending transparency.
Council, Mr. Pope, in early September, I came before the County Council and asked that a spending transparency, where we put our check register on the website. I requested that, and thank you very much. I appreciate it going on the county website, and you did it in less than 30 days. I do appreciate that. If any of you are unaware of this, you can go to fairfieldsc.com, and on the home page you look under the tab County Departments Finance, and you'll find it on the left-hand side of the page. It's interesting reading. The second part of my request on that September meeting was that the register also go on the state controller's website. I went there this afternoon and I didn't see it there. If there's a reason why we're not going to put it on the site, if you could please explain that to me. I think it would be good for the county and good for people who are in other counties. Counties that are represented there are Charleston, Greenville, Kershaw, Richland, Spartanburg, Berkeley, and I would like that extended to the Fairfield County check register extended to the controller's website. But thank you so much for getting it on the Fairfield site.
That's everyone who signed tonight. May I ask, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe there's anyone in the overflow room, and I wanted to check the sign-in sheet over there. Deputy, do you see anyone over there? Okay, let me check that. Okay, thank you. No one signed over there.
At this time, Ms. Brown, it is now 6:27. If you would post our first public hearing under number 7, please.
Authorizing Fairfield County, South Carolina to enter into an agreement to transact, convey, or sell county-owned property located at 117 East Washington Street, Winsboro, South Carolina, tax map number 1260143004000, for a nominal price to Fairfield Community Development Corporation, Incorporated, a 501c3 entity, as designated by the Internal Revenue Service for the purpose of using the facility located on the property for community uses and activities, subject to the terms and conditions to be agreed upon between the parties and other matters relating thereto.
Ms. Brown, we didn't have anyone to sign up for these two public hearings. Council, does anyone on council have any remarks? Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, maybe we could have our clerk just explain where this property is. I know we talked about it probably a couple weeks ago, but just so everyone in the audience would be familiar with this property.
Why do we not get either Mr. Pope or Mr. Anderson to do that? Or Mr. James, either one? Mr. Pope, that's your call.
I'll try, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman and Council, if you can recall, we had a request from the, actually representatives of the Chamber of Commerce in actually using county-owned property, which is actually in downtown Winsboro, for the use of various public activities. We had a subsequent proposal that was pending from Christ Central on the table at the time, and actually Ms. Vickers, I think I saw her here. There she is. She and her group actually came to council and presented an alternate proposal. The council agreed to entertain that proposal. We brought that on the agenda by title only, and we asked Mr. Jack James, our county attorney, to work with the group, and we actually have a draft ordinance on second reading. We don't intend for it necessarily to be the final agreement. However, it's a document that we can look at to make sure that we get the specifics in the document that is favorable to the group, and what it desires to do was basically a revitalization effort, and also to make it acceptable to the county. So we have it. We have the public hearing on second reading, and actually have the draft document that folks can look at, and then of course we will have a third reading. So if there are changes that need to take place, we can do those. Also, it is my understanding that from the proposal and the request, there was not a request for public dollars on this, but we would be seeking grant funds and other things in order to get this project off the ground. And so this is basically a community partnership through basically members like of the Chamber of Commerce is in downtown Winsboro. So it can be a total community effort if we can pull this off and have this be a very viable destination in our community.
Okay. Council? Mr. Montreal.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. In the last sentence of that document, it says a facility located on the property for community use and activities subject to the terms and conditions to be agreed upon between the parties and other related matters. If we approve that, what legal, between these other parties, do we wait until the other parties formally agree legally to what they want to do, or do we just turn it over to them and let them figure out what their issues are?
Between now and the third reading, Mr. Montreal, that agreement will be finalized between council and this organization. At that time, it will be brought back to the council for third and final reading.
And I assume the agreement between all the parties to be consummated.
Right.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I also think that outline of the proposal that they brought has pretty much the general terms of what was supposed to occur on the property and the different programs and stuff. So we had that. I remember I sent that out to the council, but we can resend it out to you that just kind of reinforces what was in the proposal. So those are the terms and conditions that we're trying to memorialize in the agreement itself.
The legal agreement here is between the chamber, not the other parties.
Well, it's actually not the chamber. It's another 501c3. Is it?
Fairfield Community Development
That's correct.
Corporation.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, I close this portion of public hearing at 6:33. I open up the second public hearing. Ms. Brown, would you post the second public hearing, please?
Authorizing an amendment to the fee agreement by and among Fairfield County, South Carolina, Lane Mecra North America LLC, and Lane Mecra North America Properties LLC to provide for an infrastructure credit and other related matters.
Mr. Pope, would you call the appropriate person forward to explain this to the council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Harrison will give us an update on this particular project.
Good evening, members of council, Fairfield County citizens. What this ordinance is, this is second reading for a one-time tax credit for Lang Mecra. Lang Mecra is partnering with Fairfield County to help us attract an international company that will locate in a building that it owned in the Walter Brown Industrial Park. That company is looking to create approximately 25 jobs over 5 years and invest $1.5 million in equipment.
Okay. We didn't have anyone to sign up on this public hearing, but council, is there any comments from the council?
How much of a tax credit are we gonna get?
Mr. Chairman, is there any finances involved with this credit from the council, or how does that work?
Okay.
Mr. Marshall, this is a one-time credit. Lang Mecra pays approximately $220,000 in property taxes each year. This will be a credit against their property tax bill. What they're doing is actually reducing the sales price for this other company in a proportionate amount. Actually, they've reduced it by more than what the credit amount is. The new company that's locating, after they've invested that $1.5 million in equipment, that will result in about a $36,000 annual tax, in annual taxes, additional annual taxes. So it's an offset.
Okay, any other questions? Hear none, thank you, Ms. Harrison. At this time, I will close this public hearing at 6:35. Now, we will move down to 7B. Mr. Pope, would you restate the millage change that you had brought forward?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and just to reiterate, the auditor brought this information over today. On the millage sheet that we had previously adopted, and the total mills were 191.7. Actually, under the fire bond capital, that should be 2.0 instead of 2.3. So that number is 191.4 based upon the information from the auditor. And the other thing I'd just say, Mr. Chairman, that's associated with that is that the information that we received during the public comment period regarding the millage, I'll make sure that the auditor gets that information regarding the calculation, because what we do is actually we get the calculation from the auditor to marry that up with the budget dollars, and so we will forward that to her as information and let her dispose of that matter.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign.
Hey.
One day, Ms. Brown. We are now down to item 8, resolution in opposition to House Bill 3290 and Senate Bill 203. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there anyone on council that would like to address this issue? If there isn't, I will address it myself. Quite some years ago, we had a company that wanted to come and set up a C&D landfill in Fairfield County. It was about less than an eighth of a mile from residents. It was a large landfill, and it took quite some time to get that landfill defeated. Despite what people think about landfills, if a landfill came next to your property and you didn't think it was such a bad idea, once those folks started negotiating for the property next door to you, you probably would change your mind. Everybody that I know has changed their mind once that happened. Once that public landfill did not gain traction on the Boney Road site, they moved to Jenkinsville. Tried the same thing in Jenkinsville between the council and DHEC. We were able to stop that one. we had an address from the audience about this legislation. Have been to Columbia quite a few times to address the House and Senate on this legislation. Had a meeting, a public meeting at the high school. We had less than 30 folks to show up. This is probably one of the most important pieces of legislation that has tried to come from the State House in years and years and years, and it will have more impact on this county than anything that's been adopted down there recently. If you think for 1 minute that the reason that we, or me, the chairman, as it was addressed, don't want to give up the power of home rule, the power of home rule comes from Columbia. You don't believe it? Look at how it's deteriorated since 1974. The second thing is, this council did not, or neither did any council in South Carolina, go out and solicit the right to have to be in charge of the solid waste that came from the county. It came from the state. It was given to us, I think the year was 1991, and it says that the county council and the county will be responsible for every bit of solid waste that is generated within your county confines. And that's industrial and residential. So it's not, this, we didn't pick and choose to do this. This was mandated by folks at the State House. When we start looking at the two major manufacturers, or the two major companies that deal with solid waste, this is a multi-billion-dollar operation, or companies, and they want to get all they can. When we start talking about general waste in South Carolina, if it were to stay just South Carolina waste, but with the legislation that's before us, and even if it was taken out, if this legislation passed, who would be to say that next year that the legislation wouldn't put back in that out-of-state waste could come to South Carolina? Do you want New York's waste, Pennsylvania's waste, all of the upper states' waste dumped in South Carolina? We're the dumping ground of nuclear waste already, and now we're fixing to start taking up all the waste that anybody wants to send to South Carolina. You may not be offended by that. I am. I got children and grandchildren that's coming along behind me, and I want a decent place for them to live. Anybody that's not opposed to this legislation, I don't think you have read it carefully. I don't think you've asked the right questions. We have tried to get the right answers for folks. We have tried to set up an independent debate where the council had nothing to do with it. We brought in the Association of Counties, which has been very instrumental in studying this thing and studying it in other states where this type of legislation have gone in, and the damage that it's done in those states. Water rights, people talking about aquifers and that kind of stuff, and the poison that comes from, if you ride down some of these interstates and see these mile-high stacks of trash, that's what will be in Fairfield County and in South Carolina. If it doesn't bother you, you know, that's good, and everybody has free speech. The fact of it is, there's been some things done from the Association of the County all over the state. 76% of the people that they polled said they did not want this legislation in South Carolina. So the point was a while ago, if we would have people that raise their hands, if 76% of the people, or 7.5 out of 10, said they didn't want it, And over 2/3 of the counties have already done resolutions. It's pretty apparent to me, and I hope to this council, that that's basically what the majority of people don't want in their backyards. So why are we taking a stand on this? That's the reason we're taking a stand on it. Because we have homes in this county just like you do and everybody else does. Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, and I kind of shared this at the meeting we had about two weeks ago at the high school, but I really do think I would be remiss if I did not say something concerning this matter. I will share with you, long before I had any desire to even consider running for county council, I took up the landfill issue that we were confronted with down in Ridgeway, and I will tell you it was a tremendous challenge. But I too moved back here 14, 15 years ago with the hope of moving back to this county. I love Fairfield County, to be close to my family, to raise my kids here in Fairfield County, and to retire here in Fairfield County. And I think I had only been here for probably about 3 to 4 years when I realized that a landfill was going to be positioned probably within a football field's distance of my home. And the other residents that had invested their money in homes down in the Boney Road area. And at that time, I was really surprised to find how politics work, not just here in Fairfield County, but overall. And to give you a little bit more background, the landfill, when it was first presented to council, I was involved here in the county in a different capacity, but it was first presented and it was actually voted down the first time. But as you know, in politics, once a motion comes on the floor, the winning side gets to bring it back to the floor. So it was only voted down so they could actually get another vote to then be brought back to council to get this landfill issue on the floor. And it was passed. It went to third reading, and it took a tremendous amount of money from the citizens in the area, not just on Boney Road, but on both sides of the interstate, because it would have had a negative impact on everyone living down there, from a smell, from a health issue. I could go on and on and on. But it took us a tremendous amount of time, and actually Richland County got involved because the school, Bethel Hanbury Elementary School, was involved. We had school buses coming on Boney Road. But to make a long story short, the issue was defeated, and I'm happy that it was. So it's more than just about home rule. It's about health. It's about devaluing property. I see people here all the time talking about property and sustaining property value, but it's about a lot of things. And but this is a serious issue. When you lose that control, you could have anything come to your area, including the landfill. And I just think that is something that I feel very dear about, and I do not agree, and I am very much in the resolution that we have before us tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I agree with you and Mr. Perry, because right on Highway 215 in Wallaceville, in between Glens Ridge Road and Wallaceville, they were going to put that CD landfill, and I'm talking about 3,000 potential acres of land that was right adjacent to the Broad River. That whole stretch was on the Broad River. And I don't know how many community meetings we had, but I have dozens of pictures of groups dressing in certain colors going down to DHEC and arguing the point about putting that landfill on Highway 215, and eventually DHEC agreed with the community about that, and I think ruled in the favor of the community. And I just know some of them landfills, they're only periodically checked on what you're really bringing in there, what you're really putting in there, and people could put anything in there and get away with it. I mean, I think some of the same thing happened in our recycling centers. I saw a deer in one time. So, I mean, people can throw stuff in there, and I don't know if it's chemicals or what they might be putting on it, but we need to be very observant of what's going in, not only just landfill, what's going into our recycling centers as well.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I sit on the board of the Association of Counties, and we have taken stiff opposition against this. I do agree with Mr. Coleman that this bill coming out of the Senate definitely needs to be amended in more than one or two ways. But what is coming out of the House and over to the Senate, and what came out of the House and went to the Senate is what we got in concrete that we are presently in opposition with, and hopefully it can be worked on and something that makes sense can come out the Senate or either be done away with. But the Association of Counties Board and throughout the state, they are opposed to this pretty stiffly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vice Chair.
And one last thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may add, that our House member, Ms. Mary Gail Douglas, is opposed to this bill the way it's worded as well. And she attended the last meeting, and she stated that, so.
Thank you. We're now ready for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. One nay, Ms. Brown. Okay, and now down to C. Now down to B, excuse me, second reading ordinance number 620. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. Was that a nay?
Nay.
Okay. Now down to C, second reading ordinance number 622.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. Number D, second reading ordinance number 623. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign. I'm going to stop right there. Mr. Pope, if you would explain to the audience what section D actually pertains to.
I'll let Ms. Harrison actually go ahead and actually
Okay.
give us that information.
Good evening again, members of the council. So counties enter into multi-county industrial park agreements for the sole one of the purposes of it is to provide basically an extra tax incentive to an industry that's locating. By being in a multi-county industrial park, they are entitled to an additional $1,000 tax credit on the jobs tax credits. Originally, when the law was created, it was really sort of meant that counties would do just what it says, which is create true multi-county parks, share in the cost of infrastructure, share in the cost of developing and attracting industry. But again, that sort of changed over the last few years, so to pretty much provide that additional incentive for companies. Based on this, Richland County is actually increasing the boundaries by adding another industry into the multi-county park agreement with Fairfield County. As part of that agreement, that we get a share of the revenues that industry is actually paying in the form of property taxes. In most multi-county industrial park agreements these days, the park partner receives 1% of that tax revenue. Some of the older agreements, there was a 5% revenue share. Any other?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
And just to, I guess, try to put a cap on that is that typically and traditionally in South Carolina, when rural counties, especially rural counties, can partner with urbanized counties that have a lot of infrastructure, it really benefits the rural county to have a relationship with in multi-county park agreements like this. So this is a tremendous benefit for an adjacent county-to-county relationship with our economic development.
As Mr. Pope was saying that, I'll put some numbers to it. Every year we have an agreement with Richland County, we normally take or send a check to Richland County for $40,000, and we normally receive a check for about $400,000. So that's the profit for small counties being involved with larger industrial counties. It helps your tax base, and the more companies we get into our industrial park, the more money Richland County or whoever we partner with will actually make. But every time they put a new business in an industrial park in Richland County, then our profit goes up. So that's what it's about. But I just wanted to explain that. Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Council, you look and see on 9, those are the board and commission minutes that were emailed to you. On number 10, we have two names or 2 positions. One is for the Midland Workforce Development Board. Do I have a motion for that name?
So moved.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. 10B, Central Midlands Development Corporation. You see there's a reappointment in that. If you would vote for, if you'd like to make a motion for that name. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Mr. Mussery, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. I don't have copies of those 2 individuals for those boards. I know I saw it in the email a week or 2 ago, and I think Mr. Pope asked us to respond to whoever made the recommendation for one of these appointments, but I don't have it wrong. But I don't have a copy of who that person. Yes.
Have an extra one.
They were sent with the board packet, Mr. Mussery.
Right.
With the council package.
With the council package, yeah.
Well, it's still on my computer then. I don't have, I saw it earlier, I just don't have a copy here, and I thought I'd taken everything off my computer. And there was a recommendation from Association of Counties made a recommendation when
No, the first
Council of
one,
Government.
the first one came from Midlands Workforce Development Board. We're
Right.
1 member short on that board, and they brought this name forward and to fill a slot that we have, a vacancy that we have on that board.
You have a copy of the,
And
it was just,
pass that down to Mr. Mussery. And the second one, Mr. Mussery, is that one right there that
I don't see a name on this one, but I see the name on this one. Was there a name on there? Oh, okay. There's a phone number and email there. I don't know if I understood the name.
Okay, all right. Pardon me, council, I was a little bit fast in that vote, so we'll go back and re-vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed by the same sign. The ayes have it. Ms. Brown, would you bring those 2 names forward, please?
For the appointment to the Midlands Workforce Development Board is Mr. Richie Monteith, Monteith. He lives at Jackson Creek Road here in Winsboro. And for a reappointment to the Central Midlands Development Corporation is Chairman Ferguson. The Central Midlands Development Corporation has sent his name in for reappointment to that board and asking the council for ratification of that reappointment.
I appreciate that, council. We're now down to 11 old business.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
This is a matter that the council has actually already voted on, but our clerk, being as diligent and as meticulous as she is as well, Ms. Robinson, found several scrivener's errors and spelling corrections that needed to be made regarding the ordinance that we had passed. If you recall, we had public hearings on this, and actually only amendment, I think Ms. Robinson fostered the only amendment that we had to this. And the citizen, the lady that asked the question about, when she asked the question about about the truck or tractor or what have you, this deals with nuisances in the unincorporated area of the county, but specifically to address the question that you had if you had like a junk vehicle or something like that. There is actually a provision, it's Article 4, that's abandoned, dismantled, junk, wrecked, or inoperative vehicles. And it reads, just very briefly, no person in charge or control of any property, whether there's an owner, tenant, occupant, leasee, or otherwise, shall allow any partially dismantled, inoperative, wrecked, junk, or discarded vehicle to remain on the property no longer than 72 hours. The presence of such a vehicle or parts thereof is hereby declared a public nuisance. However, there are 4 exemptions, and actually there's an exemption B, which answers your question. This section shall not apply to businesses which is permitted or legally non-conforming use as allowed by Fairfield County zoning ordinance, where such activities listed above are normal and customary associated activity with that business. So for instance, if you have a farm and you have farm machinery out, and that is, of course, that would be consistent with the zoning use that you have. I think the impetus behind this ordinance was to allow the county to have a tool to be able to clean up areas where you have junk, debris, and other things like that countywide, where code enforcement officers can actually go out and inspect those things. So clearly that provision is actually addressed in the ordinance itself. But this is just not a readoption. We just wanted to make sure that the council was aware that we were correcting some of the wording or typos and stuff in the ordinance itself, but nothing changed as far as the verbiage in the document. But we thought it was appropriate to be transparent, to come back to you and say before we actually codified and whatnot that we made those corrections.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by the same sign. We're now down to 12. Recreation vote by county council. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Could you state your motion, Mr. Marshall?
Recreation vote for county council kind of says itself, don't it? The motion, we're supposed to vote for county council. I need some structure if we're going to vote on this. I understand all council members are supposed to vote, individual can't vote. I am not clear what structurally, what does that mean? That means that if 6 council members don't approve of my project, everybody votes against it? Or do I submit a proposal and you look at it, if you don't like it, you reject it? I mean, what's the structure here? What I thought, Mr. Chairman, if I may take the time to say this, it appears this council had given the administrator authority to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on recreation without county council vote over their back or looking at what if they trust administrator to handle that kind of money. We've already voted on it. We have $500,000. I know what my project is, and here's half of it here. We submit it to the administrator, and he look at it. He knows whether it's within budget, whether or not he can put it up to be either not voted on, but to take a bid or something of that nature. And so if we're going to vote on this, what role the administrator play? Because the administrators have already spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars without us interfering with recreation. But now we're going to have council vote on recreation when the administrator had made most of those decisions. Previously.
Previously.
Previously, Mr. Pope.
Everything that has been done as far as recreation has been concerned has came through the budget process. Everything. The fact of the matter is, I brought this up about 6 weeks ago, and it's not a real complicated issue. The fact of the matter is, the bond company says that we have to come to an agreement on how we agree that the bond money is to be spent. And 6 weeks ago, we sat in here and I asked you guys to make your mind up when we wanted to bring this thing back to the floor. It's very simple. If we could have a motion that the full council, that the person in that district bring the proposals forward, and once they have numbers put to them, and that person agrees with with Mr. Pope and his staff that that's what basically you'd like to see in your district, then it comes to a vote to council. And the vote to council is all 7 members, and that is all 7 districts do it the exact same way. So all 7 of us have the same rights to vote on these things and look at them and scrutinize them for each one of the districts, and that's what I would like to receive a motion for.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. I've been saying this in the past, but my motion would be, as these projects for all 7 districts have come back from the Recreation Department to the county administrator and then forwarded back to county council, that the entire council has to vote for all 7 districts.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
District 2 does not have a plan, and probably won't have a plan for a while, because we've been too busy to actually get out and work the district. So we have 3 years to spend this money, and I guess we're half a year into it, so we have 2.5 years left. So District 2, it does not have any plan nor plans to have a plan in the next few months. So my question is, if we vote, and I know all 7 of us have to vote, you have to have a majority to spend money in this county. Are we literally, from the plans that were presented from 6 districts, going to have a dollar value beside each plan before it's put in front of us to spend it, so that we can stay within the guidelines?
Can I address that, Mr. Chairman?
It's your motion, yes.
I would absolutely think so, Ms. Robinson, because we know what the allowance is, and we have already given the information to, with the exception of you, like you said, which I understand. I think when that night when we talked about it, when we gave that information to Ms. Schaefer, that the sole purpose of that was to put a dollar figure on it so we would know what we were working with, so it could then come back to council before we voted on it, to make sure we were in compliance.
Just wanted that to be part, including and an understanding before we literally sit here and vote tonight, because there are so many things that have come down with an agreement that was given while I was off council to the previous administrator, who had the right to go out and had ad infinitum just to do anything in regard to spending those kinds of funds. And it, as the chair says, it may be in the budget, but whenever you get 2 pages and that's your budget, how do you truly know that that's written in that budget? Because we never truly, even this past year, went through item by item and discussed those budgets as to what was included. And I think Recreation had a $700,000 budget plus this year, and I don't think that included some of these improvements that are going on. If it does, and what's being spent right now on the field, I don't think that she's going to be able to run her budget. So I guess those were included in capital improvements. I don't know. We just need to get a handle on spending and literally spell it out so everybody can understand how that money's going.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I think, and I don't mean to put our interim administrator on the spot, but I think one of the things he brought up was as he was looking at the county and going forward for any major purchase or putting a dollar amount, his idea of looking at things like that was actually having it come through the department, come back through the administrator, and then being brought back to the full council to discuss before we made any decision. Was that my understanding? And I think that's how it should be done. And I think going forward, when the money is being spent, I think it should come from a department. They should be able to look at it, do their due diligence, their homework, then have the administrator present it back to council, and then we have an opportunity to look at it and then vote on it.
And that is the proper way to handle it. Has not been done that way in the past. And that's what I'm saying. Let's spell it out and follow the guidelines that have been presented to us for spending these funds and any funds that come down that are over a certain amount.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I reckon I'm from old school, and a few years back, anytime we were going to put something new in, we had committees, and like a recreational item came up, the recreation committee would look at it. If it was personnel that you're gonna have to hire, then the personnel committee would look at it and put a dollar value on each person who is going to be operating this operation. And then the finance committee would look at it, put the numbers together, or to compile everything. We don't have committees anymore, and that's asking a lot of Mrs. Schaefer and the administrator and his staff. But I think that's what we're gonna have to end up doing. I know we said we did this at budget time, but you know, I always had a problem with mid-year appropriations, and if we are going to put personnel, say at Mr. Marshall's operation, and say personnel at something that might be in my district or in the vice chairman's district, then we got to come up with a job description of what these people are going to be doing. And is that going to be up to Mrs. Schaefer? Is that going to be up to the administrator? Is that going to be up to Mr. Anderson? And in our present budget, are there places and positions in the budget that we can fulfill with these people? Or is this going to throw our budget that we presently got into a negative, because we're going to be hiring these people before the end of the year to run some of these operations with no personnel slot for these people to be getting paid out of. So then all of a sudden personnel is going to be paid out of the bond, and I don't think that is where we're supposed to be spending the money from. So I just, you know, we said something about having a work session. Everybody said we're having too many work sessions, whatever. I'm just saying that if you look at this thing the way we should look at it, and you got to determine how many new personnel we're going to hire, because I know Mr. Marshall's operation can't work without new personnel, I don't believe. And nobody knows how much the light bill is going to be. It's asking a lot of staff and asking a lot of everybody, and especially for a mid-year appropriation when we don't have any money other than the bond money. So I don't know what the stipulations are in the bond, if we can use that to pay personnel. So there's still a lot of questions, Mr. Chairman, that I hadn't figured out in my mind. I had one thing in my proposal, and that's a multi-county baseball field, because that's part of the recommendation coming from the recreational study, a centralized baseball field, and take the pressure off of Georgia Park. So I just don't know. I mean, I wish I had a definition or a defined description of what how we are going to do this completely.
Mr. Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hope I can add some value to your conversation. Just from a staff perspective, based upon the work sessions that we've had on this, just solely from a staff position, what we had intended to do was we actually took down and documented all of the items that you, as council members in your district, had brought forward. And so we call that document, that's the master list of recreational projects. What we had an expectation of is that, and I think we've sent that out, we need to probably send it out again, is to have the council to actually adopt in concept the master list of projects, then direct staff for us then to actually do the due diligence on obtaining the cost estimates on the projects that were provided to us. That's the only way we know how to get cost estimates on various things. Associated with that is we would have to find out, of course, if it also takes human capital to be able to facilitate that project. So that would be a cost estimate as well. So what we had planned to do was, once you directed us to do that, we would compile that information and then bring that information back to you. The only finite thing that we have at this point is a dollar amount. We know what dollar amount we cannot exceed. However, we need to make sure that there aren't other ancillary costs that's going to drive up budgets and other things else like that, Mr. Brown, I think what you're referring to, because you're exactly right. You cannot bring on personnel under the bond. You can only use capital dollars for the actual physical construction of buildings or buying land and those type things like that. So that would be our trigger to activate the staff to get you the numbers to come back where you could make decisions, and whether you had to cull out, if you will, various projects, switch them around. That could also possibly give Ms. Robinson additional time to do what she's working with her district to do that, if that's the desire of council. But in order to activate the staff, that's what we need. We need actually you to okay the list, and then we can get the cost estimates on those things, because some of them we know what the idea and the concept is, but we don't know what that's going to actually cost. So we had planned on bringing that information back to you. So solely just from a staff perspective, that's what we had decided to do to help the council to facilitate the process. Okay. And we do have that list. I know we've talked to several of you. We've amended that. I know, just like with Councilmember Massaria, we just had just a one bulleted line, but we went back, and if you recall, Councilmember Massaria, when you came in office last week, we incorporated the additional verbiage in your item, similar to some other ones that we had on there that listed more specificity regarding your desire for your particular area. So, but that's what we need in order to basically activate us to get you those cost estimates. Otherwise, I don't know how we would get you the cost estimates in order so that you could actually make policy decisions and recommendations on the amount of money that we have.
So what you're asking for tonight in this motion is just giving you the go-ahead to start working and bringing back some real numbers that we can have actually something to look at?
Yes, sir, and what we're saying is that is in concept. That doesn't mean anything's in stone, because clearly from the cost estimates and other things, it could come back, it may be less than the amount of money that we know that we have, or it could be more. But we would need to know that information, I would think, or I certainly would recommend that to you before you move forward. Otherwise, we don't know what the total cost is.
Mr. Massaria.
I see this again as a stalling tactic, a lot of numbers bobbing and weaving around the question, and you bring up the stuff of staff. If you started this year into next year, just get clearing ground or whatnot, it's going to take 18 months, it'll probably take into 14 to year 15. Where the staff comes in at? I mean, we have ample time to talk about staff. Everything cleared off the ground, you don't have any ground, you want a pool room and all that, I guess you're going to have to pay for staff to run that. So I have $500,000, I have a plan. Take my plan and tell me where the $500,000 cut off and start working. That's what I would like. I can't have that done?
Let me clarify something Mr. Brown brought forward.
he brought up the idea of what this vote is about. This vote isn't about what we're talking about, okay? This vote is about how the process is going to work and who's going to be voting on what. That's all this process, that's the only thing on the floor at this present time. I don't want you to get anything misconstrued about that. That's what this vote is about. Is that not right, Mr. Vice Chair? Is that what your vote?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. That any funds that will, the motion was that any funds that will be spent out of the bonds for recreation will be brought back to the full council to vote on.
Okay. Now, one thing that I will suggest that, and I agree with Mr. Moncherie on, is that if each district has X amount of money, that we aren't going to sit and wait until somebody else, till we can get all 7 districts in agreement and then go forth and do all 7, because we can't do, with the staff that the county has, we can't do 7 projects at one time, or 7 district projects, which in my district is small mini parks, so the same people would be doing the same thing repetitively, so they would have to be working on those things while somebody else was waiting to get theirs approved. So we're not, I don't see us backing up and say, we're going to do all of these at one time, or all of us going to have to come back at one time. That's impossible. Mr. Moncherie is right. We would be 2020 getting some of these things done, and that's not going to be feasible. So what we're going to have to do is, once we decide, each district member decides what they want, and the staff, Mr. Pope's staff, puts numbers to it and brings it back and says you are within budget or you are not within budget, then we can go from there for that one particular district. I mean, we don't have to wait on 2 districts or 5 districts or 7 districts, because that really doesn't make sense. But let's so that we don't muddy the water any further, let's take the vote, and now that Mr. Perry has said exactly what the motion is, Mr. Moncherie, I'll take one more comment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Let me just bring this up, because I find this to be so grossly unfair. We have the bond issue, we have the recreation issue, and Ms. Kinley, I talked to you the other day, and I asked you about my plan. You said you wouldn't vote because if I go over budget, under budget, but you want me to be under budget before you vote. Is that correct? Now, I'm just looking at the figures here, for your district. By the time you get finished spending all your money, it'd be $911,083. You just, in the last year and this year, to fix the rec center, I'm thinking the rec is in your district, isn't it? The center, rec center?
Drawdy Park is not.
Drawdy Park, the other one, the rec, is in yours? Okay, you received $91,000 and stuff that went into the rec up there, right?
Well, I think that was just came out of staff, out of their budget, not out of my budget.
Well, out of council budget, 11th and 12th, we spent $100,000 out of your district, just in. Okay. Then if you have, and yours is still up to $819,828 is what the figure is, and you have a discrepancy, and you had 39-something thousand that was left is actually $53,000 rather than that $39,000 according to your own papers here on the ball field. Now, how can one person get hundreds of thousands of dollars? I didn't vote on it. You said it was in the budget, and I've asked this council to show me in writing where we actually literally, and I think Ms. Robertson just alluded to things went through, we didn't actually itemize and went through and we voted for it. How did it get past me? But here's money that we've already have delegated, and there's still, you have to bring it back, you have to do this and that. Now I'm asking council, take Mr. Pope, if the council agreed, to take my $500,000 and show me exactly what my request, what can be done with that. And let's start moving. Can you do that in a reasonable time, less than two years?
The council directs me to do that.
Is that that's a reasonable request? Or can I ask him to do that for my district? You speak for your own district.
Mr. Montreal, the vote has got to come on how this money is to be spent. Now, we can sit here all night and argue about which way it's supposed to go and this, that. The fact of the matter is, till we vote on a common way to spend this bond money is not going to be spent. For the simple reason is, we have to give the bonding agent the way this money is going to be spent out. And so far, we can't agree on how we gonna spend it. Or we're actually talking around how we gonna spend it. We talking about other things, but that's not in the motion. The motion is that all 7 members, each council member will bring a project back. At that point in time, once the numbers are put to it, all 7 council members will vote on everybody's motions, everybody's projects that they're gonna have in their district. That's the only thing that's up for vote right now.
Yes, sir, and I bought my project, it's up to $500,000, I have the plans and everything, and if you look at it and say, well, you can only have a half a bathroom and some porta bathrooms out there rather than real ones. You can't have a picnic, or however you break it down in terms of the idiosyncrasies of it, then I would think that the administrator would look at that and say, well, you want a few things here, you're $100,000 over. And this is what you need to cut back to come into compliance with what we're talking about. You're telling me you're not going to give him the authority to do that? You got to wait until you come back. How are you going to figure out the figures if you don't sit down with me, go over my plans, you and the recreation director, and come up with some, you're saying come up with some numbers. What's the holdup?
Mr. Vice Chair.
Maybe I'll try to shed a little bit of light. I'm with you, Councilman Montreal, on that. I'm ready to move forward as well. But we can't move forward until we get this vote out the way to say how we're going to vote. So once we vote on how we're going to vote, then they can start researching and getting us this price back on the project so we can move forward. I'm with you. I'm ready to move forward. I mean, I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to get that information back, take it down to the folks in District 1 to let them know how much it's going to cost, what we can do. But before we can do that, we got to vote on the process, which is the motion was that it will come back before a full council. Now, once we vote tonight, the staff would know how to start moving forward so they can get those cost estimates back to you. So we just got to vote so then we can start moving forward.
So your vote is, we are voting, all 7 council members have to vote on all 7 council members' districts, or whatever they have.
That's correct.
Whatever they have, but it's got to come from the administrator. He's got to go get the numbers and the recreation, bring it back to us, give it to us, and then we vote on it. Is that what I'm hearing?
And I would think that will get started as soon as we vote.
I don't think you're asking anything different than what I said.
And that's what I just told you. I agree. I agree with you, and that's why I was saying we need to get to the vote so we can, yeah.
Let's vote.
I was going to say, I have one suggestion.
All right, we got one suggestion down here.
Not really a suggestion, but because we're dealing with this bonding attorney, because everything has to be in legal verbiage, why didn't we have a written out presentation as to how we say it so it will pass and be able to be put into the bond exactly right tonight? That's why I asked earlier. Instead of just saying all 7 have to vote, it needs to be a little more detailed than that, and I think we're working in getting there. But you need a little more legal verbiage than what we're saying to accomplish this tonight.
Mr. James, question of expertise here. Do we need this thing more in depth than saying that all council members will make the decision on how this bond money is spent, or do we have to go deeper in depth than that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it's I mean, you could get more in depth, but it's a question of how you want to vote on it. And so I'm not the bonding attorney, so I don't have any handy verbiage to give to you, but it sounds to me that it's just a question of how you want to do it, how you want to vote on it, how to expend the money.
Well, I think at this point, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. And I'm gonna call for the vote, and then we'll go from there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I could just say this, and I think Ms. Robinson's due an additional response, and I agree with what Mr. James said. However, I have read the bond document. I'm not an attorney, but I think the issue that the council has been wrestling with is your vote by everyone voting is consistent with state law. And I would ask Jack on that is, the bottom line is, and I think it was Ms. Robinson who may have even said it at the last council meeting, and you, in my professional opinion, you're exactly correct. Only the council by majority vote can vote to appropriate funds and dollars. So therefore, this exercise that you've gone through, and I think the point that you're at now, is just consistent with the law. I don't think that we need any additional verbiage to say that, but it's consistent. Had we moved forward where we were appropriating dollars in some different type way, that's not a majority vote of council, I think that would have been problematic for the bond itself.
We
I don't think that we need to go in and say, okay, it's going to be approved and put in front of all 7 for a vote based on each project, based on their cost.
No, ma'am. However, I think it's kind of like one of those things in English where it's kind of, you understood once you vote, we can't exceed the amount. Clearly, we can't exceed the amount because that's capped. What we're doing now is trying to figure out the possibility of some of these ancillary costs, what may be associated with that, to make sure that we stay within that. And from your vote, at least what's been discussed here is you will actually address that issue because it's to come back, and basically everyone is going to have their role in saying yes or no before we actually move forward with the project. So I think there again, I think this one vote will begin the process, as some of you have mentioned, in order to keep us consistent with the potential expending of those funds.
Well, as long as everyone understands that's the extenuating circumstances that go with this vote.
Mr. Montreal.
What I need to understand, if we're going to vote, all council members going to vote, that we have the right to vote on the money, and you already voted for the $500,000 for recreation purposes. Is that not right? Is that how we got the bond, or we didn't vote, we just got it? Okay. Okay. So it was voted for that specific purpose. Now we're talking about how are we going to distribute it and how are we going to handle that money. And what I'm asking for this council, if we all vote on it, that when we vote on it, that we give you the instructions of whatever council members have already have their projects prepared to present to you, that you take that project and go and you work that project and say up to $500,000. This is what we can do, Mr. Montreal, in your community. Is that not feasible to work on, or I'm hearing you saying bringing up other things and staff? What can you do with the $500 to show me with the plan that I have?
Well, I don't think, Councilman Master, from my standpoint, I don't think there's anything inconsistent with that. But we need this in order to enable us to move forward to be able to get those things. And I don't want to bring up some kind of, but there could be, for instance, I don't know, but like one of the locations that we've talked about, I know, you and I, we wrote out there. I mean, it could be something on the site development cost on the site where, typically a site, it costs so much per cubic yard. But all of those things like that, I think we need some folks to be able to look at that, to do that.